The night was silent, heavy with the weight of secrets. When three masked men crept toward the sprawling Kennedy estate, they believed they were about to pull off the score of a lifetime. John Kennedy's mansion, a symbol of wealth and old Southern resilience, stood like a fortress under the pale glow of the moon. Rumors had swirled for years about safes filled with cash, rare antiques, and priceless heirlooms tucked away inside. To the thieves, it was nothing more than an easy target. But what they didn't know was that this mansion held more than treasuries. It held the unshakable spirit of a man who had spent his life learning how to stand his ground. The leader of the group, a wiry man named Vince, whispered instructions to his partners. Were in and out, no mistakes. They scaled the tall wrought iron fence, slinking across the trimmed hedges like shadows. Everything about their movements screamed confidence. But beneath it was arrogancy, the kind of arrogance that blinds men to the traps they walk into. Inside, John Kennedy sat quietly in his study, the glow of a single lamp painting his face in half-light. He wasn't reading or working, he was simply listening. Years in public service had sharpened his instincts, and tonight something gnawed at him, a disturbance in the air, a subtle sound out of place. He reached over to his desk, where an old revolver rested beside a leather-bound Bible. John wasn't a man who lived in fear, but he was a man who believed in preparation. The thieves entered through a side door, thinking themselves undetected. Their flashlights cut through the dark halls, bouncing off portraits of ancestors, bookshelves filled with law texts, and artifacts collected from decades of history. "Jackpot," one of them muttered. But as they moved deeper into the house, a strange unease settled in. It wasn't the creak of the wooden floors or the whisper of the curtains in the drawn-up. It was the feeling of being watched, and they were. John appeared at the end of the hallway, calm and composed, his tall frame commanding even in slippers and a robe. He didn't shout, he didn't panic. His voice was low, steady, almost like a father addressing reckless sons. "You boys must be lost," he said, his southern drawl cutting through the tension. The men froze. They had expected alarms, maybe security guards, but not the homeowner himself standing firm in the shadows. Vince tried to mask his fear with bravado. "Step aside, old man. We're not here for you." John took a slow step forward, eyes locked on theirs. "That's where you're wrong. You came into my home. That makes this about me." What followed wasn't a gunfight or a violent clash. It was something far more unsettling for the intruders. John Kennedy, with his unshakable poise and piercing words, dismantled them without lifting a finger. He spoke with the authority of a man who had seen too much of life to be rattled by thieves in the night. "Do you even know what you're stealing?" he asked, gesturing toward a cabinet they had cracked open. Inside were neatly folded letters and handwritten notes from his late wife, preserved with care. "That's not money. That's not gold. That's memory. That's love. What you're touching can't be replaced." The youngest thief, barely more than a teenager, lowered his flashlight. His hands trembled as guilt crept in. He hadn't signed up to desecrate something sacred. Vince barked at him to stay focused, but the boy's resolve was cracking under John's quiet strength. "You think this house makes me rich?" John continued. "It isn't. What makes a man rich are the things no thief can ever take: your faith, family, the lessons carved into him by hardship. You boys don't need what's in this house. You need to figure out who you are before you throw your lives away chasing shadows." For the first time, the intruders felt the weight of their own choices. The mansion no longer looked like a prize, it looked like a mirror, reflecting back their desperation. Suddenly, the wail of sirens cut through the night. Job had pressed the silent alarm long before they made it inside. Panic surged among the thieves. Vince cursed under his breath, but the boy who had faltered earlier spoke up, his voice cracking. "We should stop. He's right. He's a broken bar. This isn't worth it." When the police arrived, two of the men fled into the woods, but the youngest stayed behind. He dropped his mask and surrendered, his eyes darting toward John as if silently asking for forgiveness. John didn't smile, but he nodded once, a small gesture of acknowledgement that maybe, just maybe, the boy had a chance to turn things around. The next morning, the story spread across the town like wildfire. Reporters painted John Kennedy as a man who had stood unshaken in the face of danger. But to John, The real victory wasn't protecting his possessions. It was the hope that his words had planted a seed in at least one lost soul. As he walked through his home, carefully returning the letters to their rightful place, he whispered to himself, "A man's worth is never in what he owns, but in what he stands for." And for those who had tried to rob him, the regret came not from getting caught but from realizing they had broken into the house of a man who carried more wealth and wisdom and courage than they could ever steal. The message was clear: true strength isn't about walls, weapons, or riches. It's about standing firm in your values, even when darkness comes knocking. And that was something the thieves would never forget.